Thanks, Adam. That was an absolutely fantastic session. We're now going to move swiftly on, and we're going to hear from a guy called Roger Noble from Noble Dynamics, who is a guru when it comes to big data and analytics and putting your data to work within your business. So we're going to hear from Roger. He's going to talk to us about how we can use information within our businesses to help us defend against cybercrime. And this session's called Separating the Signal from the Noise. Roger, over to you.
Well, hi, my name is Roger Noble. I'm the director of Noble Dynamics, and I'm a data consultant, and what I like to do is sort of help businesses and organisations really get good value out of their data, whether it be structured data, unstructured data, data of any sort really. Something that I just really love, and what gets me excited and passionate is about making the best use of data and helping people to better understand it and make better decisions ultimately. And data is one of those things. It's funny in that it has so many broad applications. It's used in so many different places. And what excites me about data is that it has applications in healthcare, where it can literally save lives, in entertainment, and a whole lot of other different uses. But also it has a downside. It can also be used for maleficent purposes and for cyber attacks and cyber crime, which is something we'll get to in a second. But clearly, today I really want to talk about how you can get the most out of your data, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the different data types that are out there and some of the data that you might have in your business that we can start to make use of. So in business and in your personal life, data is really key to making any kind of decisions. Without good data, you really struggle to make real sort of actionable decisions with that. And you tend to sort of lean more into the gut feel of things, which more often than not tends to be wrong. Which is why really over the last 20 years or so, businesses have seen huge amounts of change and drive towards digital transformation and sort of really developing database platforms, AI and API integrations, integrating databases and systems so that they can make better decisions with the data that they have and the data that they have within their organisations. And really though, most organisations, it comes down to a balance between innovation and investing in the future and cost control. And really the secret to that and to most successful businesses is to make the most of data. With data you can unlock new opportunities to make the right decisions at the right time, to discover new customers, new segments, new product features. I just love data, you can tell. And data analytics is really the key to all of that. And really, if you think about your own business, there's so many bits of data spread out all over. There's so many different systems out there, and a lot of these are probably familiar to you. You're probably using a lot of these in your business today, whether it's Xero, Office 365, IBM for backups. All of these systems out there have data spread all over. But the shocking fact is that actually, as much as 8% of all this data is used within a business. And most of it tends to be sort of centered around, finance or sales with your CRM data, where that data is found. And that's really where most businesses tend to focus when they're looking at data strategy and making use of their data. And while you can get quite a lot out of those sort of systems, it really leaves the remaining 92% untapped in all of these other systems out there. And really, it comes down to not having the right tools and not having the right amount of investment and time to really leverage all of those sources of data. So really, when you've got all these systems, when you've got this data sort of spread all out over the place, it very quickly becomes costly and difficult to be able to pull all these different data sources together to really make use of them. And that's why there's such an explosion of growth in the moment in different tooling platforms, different systems, different big data analytics to be able to help you sort of pull all these data sources together to make the most of it. But unfortunately, the real barrier to entry here is cost and time. Many businesses lack the resources and the power of Fortune 500 companies to be able to leverage this data. And so ultimately that's sort of where a lot of these sort of digital transformation type projects fall short. But as Morpheus says, what if I told you there was another way? My business has actually been working with Predatar for over the past year now, and we've been doing quite a lot with their data and helping them to get the most of it, especially in the realms of anomaly detection and trying to identify different types of cyber attacks. And some of what I've been working on with them is what I'd like to talk to today. And what might be interesting to know is that actually almost all of you in the audience here actually has a data lake, but you might not realize it. Actually, if you think about it, your backups are a data lake. You know, your backups come from combined sort of data from multiple systems, from databases, from online platforms, from your on-prem data, and other hybrid platforms, all into a central place. And if you think about it, I mean, that is a data lake, and it represents a unique opportunity to really sort of tap in to that data that's available in that backup. For example, if you're using IBM's backup solution, you already have a lot of this in place now. But the question is, how do you make use of it? So what I'd like to explore today is just one application of that data and sort of delve into a little bit more detail about just one use case where that applies. So when you look at the market leaders in this space today, in the backup space, they're all offering some sort of anomaly detection. But the problem with a lot of these is that they only go so far. They give you a lot of information. They sort of like to flag up a lot of anomalies, but what they often fail on is helping you to navigate and work with the vast amount of false positives that tend to come up. You know, a lot of the time, if you're getting flagged for things that just aren't an issue, you get to a point pretty quickly where you just turn it off. It's just too much. You don't have the time to sift through it all. And so today we're going to look through one method where you can actually use AI and machine learning techniques to address this problem and create a better anomaly detection system. So to start with, to sort of explain how all this works, I just wanted to start with one type of data point that you might have with your backups. And that's looking at the data and the size of the data that you are backing up on a regular basis. When it comes to backups, typically you're not backing up an entire database every time or in one go. What you end up doing is backing up small diffs or small bits of information at once, which is sort of the difference between today versus yesterday. You know, what are the bits that have changed, and then you're just backing up those smaller parts. That way you're not sending terabytes of information to your backup daily, and it helps to keep bandwidth and other costs down. And it's that little bit of data that gets sent over. It could look different, or it can change over time, but if you look at it as a whole, it can actually represent a unique, almost like a fingerprint of that particular device or server or platform that actually you can train machine learning models to identify and then figure out a typical behavior or a typical pattern that happens with that machine. One thing though, and one downside to that, is that it really is data dependent. These systems and AI in general only is as good as the data that you feed into these systems, and if you don't have enough information, it can fail to really capture and understand that fingerprint that we're talking about really well. So, I mean, a simple example is perhaps you've got a system that is only used infrequently, maybe at the end of the month. If you only have 2 weeks of data, it's very difficult for it to tell that, when it gets busy at the end of the month, that's not an anomaly, because it just doesn't have enough historical information to go on. And so having enough data to be able to train these models is really key, to be able to better understand and then start to think about how we can use that data to predict future behaviour for anomaly detection. So what we can do is, once we have all of that data, it makes it easier to put together that fingerprint to find those behaviours, and then when looking forward, it can sort of, based on past history, based on past actions or those bits that are moving on, it can have a guess as to what the future might look like. And this is where it gets really interesting, actually, because we can then use that guess and compare it with the real world to see, is this an anomaly or not? If we see something coming along where it's sort of jumping way outside of what it was predicting it should see from that backup, then that's something that we can flag and say, look, this isn't right. We were expecting this, but what we're seeing is that. Which is great. I mean, this is sort of the beginnings of an anomaly detection system. The trick here and the real art behind all of this, though, is still really deciding upon what is a true anomaly and what's a false positive. You wouldn't want this going off every time there was a 0.01% difference between what you're seeing and your prediction. There is an art to sort of tweaking this and saying, look, this is sort of the threshold where I think this is a true anomaly. And the other thing that we can do, though, is then start to introduce additional sources of data. All of these just help to really dramatically improve the accuracy of our models and to increase our chances that we are detecting true anomalies. So we've already got our line in the middle for data transferred, but we could add to that, the duration of the backup, how long it took. We could add the dedute ratio, for example, and just with these 3 data points, we can get orders of magnitude more accuracy, so that all of these things in concert together show that there is an anomaly. We can be pretty confident that we're on the right track here, that this is something completely unexpected. Just another example here between 2 different types of anomalies. We're seeing, these are sort of 2 examples here, where at the top we've got our predicted behaviour, and then below is our actual behaviour. And you can sort of see on anomaly A, there's a sort of a slight difference. The data changed a few extra points. It took, an extra hour. And so is this a true anomaly? Looking at anomaly B, you can see actually that there's been a significant change. It's changed, 50% change. Backups times took a lot longer. And you wouldn't want these 2 anomalies, although they are, they may be anomalies, you wouldn't want these to be treated differently. You definitely want anomaly B to be sort of a much higher priority or a different level of alert. This should be a 10 or 11 instead of a 2 or a 3 out of 10. And so the other thing to look at is, how do you kind of rank, or how do you sort of highlight and say that this is a high priority anomaly versus a low priority anomaly? And something that's really important when designing these systems to really come up with that definition for these. The final thing, and one of the most important to really start to build a value out of these systems, is to have what's known as a feedback loop. And I want to just sort of try to explain that with a bit of a simpler example, something completely different. Say we're trying to develop a system for finding cats in photos. And so whenever you develop these types of systems, typically what you do is you get loads of pictures of cats, and you draw boxes around them and say, that's a cat, and that's a cat, and that's a cat. And you feed them into a model and train it, and then over time it learns what a cat looks like. However, you might introduce a new animal and it will get confused. If it's never seen a dog before, it might try and think that that's a cat also. And what's critical here is that you need to be kind of along the way telling it that this new data point, this new animal, is not a cat, it's actually a dog. And by giving it that feedback, what it does is it helps to improve the model, because models change over time. They can degrade with age. As new points of data come in, as the world changes around these models, they can lose accuracy over time. And so being able to have a constant feedback loop is critical to making sure that your models stay relevant. And this is especially important when it comes to cybercrime. It's like a constantly moving target. And so to sort of show you this, you've got these sort of multiple stages when it comes to your models. First, you've got your AI. It sort of predicts a certain behaviour. It then compares that against the real world and potentially flags an anomaly. The feedback then comes in is that we can actually test a lot of these anomalies when it comes to backups, because if there's a known attack vector, if there's some sort of a ransomware that's on a system, we can actually scan it and identify and see if it's really there or not. And then this becomes the perfect kind of feedback to this system. We can then put that into the model and then let it learn from that. So when it sees these anomalies in the future, it knows from real world data that this is a true anomaly. So where does this leave us? I just wanted to sort of summarise what we talked about today and a few points. The first is that actually a lot of us have a data lake and a lot of data in one place that we can access today already. And what's key is that how can we start to put that real goldmine of data to good work. Secondly, include as many data points as possible when doing any kind of AI or any kind of data analytics. You don't want to be reliant on one source. It's by combining all these together that you start to get true value out of your data. Thirdly, not all anomalies are alike. Just because it's an anomaly, maybe it's one that you're able to let slide. Others are way more important, and you need to be able to have a measure and really understand what a good and high quality, high severity anomaly looks like compared to a low severity anomaly. And finally is having that feedback loop. It's critical that you are constantly keeping that human or that test in the loop so that you can use that to constantly refine, remove biases from your AI and improve them over time. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for your time today, and also just want to say thanks to Predatar and IBM for having me. Cheers, thanks.
Hello, I'm Josh Lewis from IBM. Do you remember when Tom Cruise was lowered from the ceiling of a CIA vault in the 1996 Mission Impossible movie? I don't. How old do you think I am? Apparently it's a great scene, and it's a really good way to explain the concept from the air gap. So let's take a look at the iconic movie scene now.
Josh, we can't show it, mate. It's legal copyright stuff.
So what are we going to do?
You're the TikTok superstar. You work it out.
I've got this. So here's a question for you. Why didn't Tom Cruise and his mates hack into the CIA computer remotely? It would have been a boring movie, but it would have been much less hassle. It's because the computer wasn't connected to a network, and that's an air gap. It's when a device is isolated from any other device or network. Way back in the 90s, when data needed a physical connection to be transferred, the term air gap made sense. Literally having a clear air between your device and a network meant that it couldn't be accessed. Fast forward 30 years and the principle still exists. But today, there's different ways to achieve it. One of the most popular ways to achieve an air gap is a logical air gap, where the use of logical processes such as encryption and role-based access make a storage device inaccessible to unauthorized people. And the most popular way to achieve a logical air gap is with cloud object storage, which you can get from IBM Cloud. Of course, the ultimate device for creating a true air gap for your backups is tape. A tape library provides a true physical air gap. Believe it or not, tape has a role to play in your ultimate cyber resilient backup. Even I have to admit it. Sometimes you can't beat the oldies.